She slammed her palm on the hood of my truck and shouted, "He's hiding something in that barn. This is HOA territory and I have the right to search it." I was just walking back from checking the fence line when I saw her there, Karen, with her phone in one hand and some cheap clipboard in the other. I didn't even get to open my mouth before she started dialing. "Send HOA enforcement immediately. He's defying code 12F, she said loud enough for the whole block to hear. I stood there silent. Not because I was scared, but because I knew exactly what was about to happen. Within 10 minutes, 2 guys in badly fitted tactical vests showed up in a dusty white SUV that had HOA patrol written with vinyl stickers. No license plate, no authority. Karen walked over to them like she was the mayor of the town. "That barn right there, he's got unauthorized equipment." "Maybe worse," she whispered like she was part of a secret mission. One of the fake cops nodded, pulled out a crowbar, and marched straight toward my barn like they had a warrant signed by the president himself. I stepped in front. "You touch that lock, I call real law enforcement," I said calmly. My voice didn't shake. "This is private land, and I own every inch of it." Karen rolled her eyes and screamed, "He's threatening officers. Arrest him!" She actually said that, loud and proud, but those men didn't flinch. They just kept walking until they reached the barn doors. And then, click, the padlock turned from the inside. The door creaked open slow. First thing they saw were 2 pairs of boots. Then came the shadows. My son stepped out, fully uniformed, loaded with presents. Liam led, arms crossed, eyes cold. "You boys looking for something?" he asked, voice like steel. Josh stood behind him, straight out of deployment. The air got heavy. One of the fake cops stuttered. We were just doing an HOA sweep." Liam tilted his head. "Since when does HOA send unmarked vehicles with no legal badges to search private barns?" That silence was the sound of Karen realizing she picked the wrong damn family. And I hadn't even said the real line yet. I looked her dead in the eye and said, "Lady, I didn't serve 2 tours just to get pushed off. My own land by a woman with a clipboard and 2 clowns in dollar store vests. Your move, Karen." Karen took a small step back, but her mouth kept running. "You can't intimidate me with costumes. I know my rights. This is an HOA protected neighborhood." Her voice cracked a little, but she was too far in to back out now. "He's probably hiding something illegal in there. Those uniforms don't scare me," she barked, pointing at my sons like they were just props in a backyard play. Liam didn't even blink. He slowly pulled out his phone, tapped a button, and flipped the screen toward them. "Live camera feed, high res. Angle's been on this barn for the last 48 hours. Everything's recorded. And if you think you're walking in without a warrant, go ahead. Make it easier for the real cops." Karen hesitated, then turned to the 2 fake officers like she was waiting for backup. But they looked at each other and started inching away toward their SUV. "Ma'am, maybe we should," one of them mumbled. She snapped at them. "No! Do your job. He's hiding something." That's when Josh stepped forward, calm and slow. "You ever heard of federal land rights?" he asked. "This property was deeded before your little HOA was even formed. You can't override a federal deed with some neighborhood pamphlet." He tapped the laminated proof hanging from a nail on the barn wall. "You just trespassed on protected land, on camera." Karen's face turned red, then white. "You're making this up!" "This is a setup," she shouted, her voice now desperate and shaky. I pulled out a small stack of papers from my back pocket, copies of every legal document tied to the land. "You really think I'd let anyone touch this place without being ready?" I said. "You messed with the wrong family." She turned in a circle like she didn't know what to do, then ran back to her golf cart, dialing again. "Hello, yes, I'd like to report armed men threatening me on my property." Her voice got louder. "Yes, they have guns and are trying to kill me." Josh raised an eyebrow. "That's a felony. False emergency call, and we've got it all recorded." She froze mid-sentence, realizing every lie was being caught in real time. Sirens suddenly echoed in the distance, not fake ones this time. Real law enforcement was on the way. Karen looked up like she'd just seen a ghost. I turned to my sons and said quietly, "Let's see how she explains this one when the real cops get here." And none of us moved an inch. The sheriff's cruiser pulled up fast, lights spinning but no siren. 2 real deputies stepped out, hands resting near their holsters, eyes scanning the scene. One of them, a tall man with a buzz cut and sharp voice, walked right toward me. "We got a 911 call about armed threats. You the property owner, sir?" Before I could answer, Karen bolted forward, all dramatic. That's him. He and those 3 men came at me with weapons. I'm the HOA president. I was doing a routine inspection and they threatened to kill me. The deputy held up his hand to silence her. Ma'am, we'll get to you. Sir? He turned back to me. I handed him my ID and the land deed. I'm the legal owner. Name matches the records. Everything's documented, including her trespassing, the fake cops, and the false 911 call. Security footage is on that phone. Liam stepped forward and placed it into the deputy's hand. The screen already queued up. Karen scoffed. Those videos are probably fake. Deep fakes. He's ex-military, they know how to… The second deputy, a younger guy, interrupted her. Ma'am, are you saying you brought unauthorized individuals, posing as law enforcement to this man's private land, without a warrant or legal authority? Karen paused. For once, she had nothing to say. Just silence and breathing. The first deputy watched the footage for barely 30 seconds before looking up. Ma'am, I'm advising you not to say another word. What you did here, trespassing, impersonating authority, false emergency call, those are serious charges. I was just trying to enforce order, she screamed. This is my neighborhood. I couldn't help it, I laughed. Not loud, just enough for her to hear. Lady, I've buried brothers overseas so people like you can keep yelling without thinking. But not on my land. The 2 fake cops tried sneaking into their SUV. The younger deputy spotted them and pulled out his radio, requesting backup. We've got impersonators trying to leave the scene. Karen spun around, panicking. You can't do this to me. I am the HOA. I run this place. But the older deputy was already slipping cuffs over her wrists. Not today, ma'am. Today you're under arrest for criminal trespass, false reporting, and conspiracy to impersonate law enforcement. As she was being walked toward the cruiser, she yelled back, You'll regret this. This whole community will back me up. Liam looked at her and said calmly, That's the problem. You thought this was your land. It never was. As they loaded her into the back of the cruiser, she thrashed around like a fish out of water, screaming nonsense. I have rights. I pay more taxes than any of you. But the cruiser door slammed shut on her mid-rant, sealing her voice inside the metal cage she never thought she'd end up in. The 2 fake officers didn't even put up a fight. One tried claiming he was just a contractor, and the other said, She told us it was legal. The deputies didn't care. Backup arrived in minutes, and both were handcuffed. Their fake gear bagged as evidence. The younger cop gave me a respectful nod. Sir, looks like you handled this with discipline. Thank you for staying calm. I didn't say much. I just pointed toward my sons. They kept this house safer than any HOA ever could. The sheriff reviewed the land deed again. This document, it's ironclad. Karen had no authority. Actually, looks like her HOA has been trying to annex properties without legal standing for years. You might want to look into a civil case. This ain't just harassment, this is fraud. That caught my attention. You mean, she's been doing this to other folks too? He nodded. Your case might help open up a full investigation. Liam looked at me. Maybe it's time we do more than just defend. Maybe it's time we expose everything. The next morning I got a knock on my door. Local news. Word had already gotten out. The reporter stood there with a mic and said, Sir, we've heard a member of your family caught the HOA president impersonating police on camera. Is it true? I smiled just slightly. She didn't just impersonate the law. She tried to rewrite it. On land that's protected by blood and paper. And my family doesn't play games with either. It aired that night. Within 24 hours, I had over 20 emails from other residents, stories of Karen towing their cars, issuing fake fines, even threatening evictions. A storm was brewing, and this time she wouldn't be able to hide behind a clipboard. But what she didn't know was this barn had a lot more than just tools and old farming gear inside. It held something that would shake everything. 3 days later, while Karen sat behind bars waiting for her lawyer, I unlocked a second compartment inside the barn floor. Beneath a thick wooden panel was a steel case, cold and heavy. Liam opened it gently and pulled out a small hard drive. One we hadn't touched in years, not since the time I left federal service. Back then, during a task force sting on white-collar land rackets, we'd come across documents linking small-town HOAs to bigger networks, companies buying land illegally, laundering it through neighborhood management groups, and pushing people off their own properties. I kept evidence. Never thought I'd need it. Until now. Josh plugged the drive into his laptop and loaded the files. Karen's HOA. It was on the list. Not just her, 3 board members, 2 property investors, and even a former county official were named. And there it was. The blueprint for how they were planning to force older property owners to sell through intimidation and fines, so developers could flip the land. Liam looked up from the screen. This isn't just fraud. It's a full-blown land theft operation. I nodded slowly. They thought they were targeting an old vet with a barn full of rust. They didn't know they stepped onto federal turf. With receipts. I called the same sheriff who arrested Karen. When he heard what we had, he personally showed up, this time with 2 investigators in plainclothes. Within hours, our barn became evidence central. Meanwhile, Karen's face was all over the local news, the footage of her screaming about Code 12F while being cuffed had gone viral. But no one knew yet. She wasn't just an entitled neighbor. She was part of something bigger, something that was about to collapse. And then, the bomb dropped. One of the documents revealed a signed contract. Karen had accepted $40,000 under the table to clean up our area by removing problem properties. Mine was at the top of that list. My hand tightened on the edge of the table. She wanted me gone. Not for rules. For money. Josh whispered, "This is going to the feds. Like it or not, we're going back in." And I just sat there staring at that document with her name on it. She didn't know it yet, but her arrest was only the beginning. 2 days later, federal agents rolled into town. Quiet, no lights, no sirens. Black SUVs, tinted windows. The kind of visit that doesn't end with warnings. It ends with indictments. Karen's arrest had triggered something massive. Her phone records, bank transfers, emails. They all matched the documents we'd pulled from the barn. She'd been part of a multi-state land scam, feeding reports to shady real estate groups while using HOA, violations as leverage, false citations, fake inspections, forcing homeowners, especially veterans, widows, and immigrants, into selling their properties below value. The sheriff personally came to shake my hand. "You didn't just protect your land, sir. You helped uncover one of the dirtiest real estate rackets we've ever seen." But it didn't feel like a win, not yet, because I still remembered how calm Karen looked when she first stepped onto my land, like she truly believed she owned it, like she believed the system would back her up, again. That night I stood in front of the barn with my boys. The wind was still, quiet. Liam looked at me and said, "It's not about the barn anymore, is it?" I shook my head. "Nope, it's about every family she did this to. Every person she bullied into moving. It ends now." The next day, we printed 50 copies of the documents and placed them in sealed manila envelopes. One went to every house in the neighborhood. On the front, "What Karen never told you." By noon, the neighborhood was buzzing. People were shocked, angry, some in tears. A retired teacher down the block told us she'd lost her home last year after Karen fined her $500 a day for her front porch paint being too faded. She thought it was real. She didn't fight. Now the truth was out. That evening, a group of neighbors showed up on my driveway. They came with coffee, with stories, with thanks. One of them, a single mom, said, "We were scared of her. But you weren't. You reminded us this is our land too." I didn't say much. Just nodded. Because I knew what was coming next. Wasn't just about revenge. It was about justice. The next morning, the headlines hit. Local HOA president. Linked to multi-million-dollar land scam. Federal charges filed. Karen's mugshot was plastered on every news channel from state to national. She looked nothing like the clipboard queen who used to terrorize our block. Now she looked like someone who finally realized she wasn't untouchable. The feds confirmed what we already knew. Over 24 homeowners had been forced to sell or vacate under fake HOA threats. With the evidence we handed over, indictments were issued across 4 counties. Karen's so-called board members were caught trying to delete emails and shred files. Didn't matter. The paper trail was long, deep, and airtight. A public town hall was held the following week. For the first time, the people who were silenced finally had a mic. One by one, neighbors stood and spoke about what they'd endured. Fines for planting the wrong flowers, threats over parking in their own driveways, intimidation, manipulation, even forged letters. When they asked me to speak, I kept it short. I looked at the crowd and said, This country didn't give me freedom just to be bullied off my porch. We fought for this land and we'll keep fighting to protect it. From anyone, clipboard or badge. The room went silent, and then exploded into applause. Later that night, as I sat back on my porch with my sons, watching the sun dip behind the barn, Liam handed me something. A new sign he'd made. I laughed when I saw it. No trespassing. We mean it. We hung it right above the barn door, not because we were scared anymore, but because now everyone knew whose land this really was. And no one, not Karen, not her fake cops, not her dirty board, was ever stepping foot on it again. Subscribe my YouTube channel for more stories.